Welcome to ALC 314, week 8, and what we're looking at this week is politics and advertising, a short history to the contemporary. Now you'll notice a lot of things, at least if you've done some of the readings about how politics is positioned in this world of advertising, whether you're thinking of the world of advertising or politics, they intersect because in fundamental ways, advertising is about promotion. And politics is technically about notions of rhetoric and persuasion. And somehow these combine, maybe not perfectly, but in an interesting way. So just a short video today to get us through this. There are several readings you should go through. And I think it's useful because it's one of the best, politics is one of the best ways of kind of understanding contemporary advertising and how it's positioned and how its value is kind of changed over time. Now, there is no question a long connection of political promotion to politics itself. And so whether it's in Parliament or in Congress or Houses of Representatives, it is clear that political promotion, if we can call it in that more general way around political advertising, is a form of communication in political democracies. So somehow they are twinned, and that's why they're kind of interesting. It is a natural way in which we expect people to over-present, in a sense, their own politics, even while they want truth claims somehow attached to it, something informational as well as a little bit embellished to draw an audience in, to draw the affective connection that we're all looking for. So what we can see is politics is an elaborate attention economy. Not entirely, that is not the whole purpose of politics, but in terms of where it intersects with political advertising, it is an attention economy. It wants to make things visible. And one of the things that it wants to make visible is the candidates, the individuals, and the issues. All of those are important. The candidates are the vehicle for the movement of issues. The movement of political parties are often also determined by their relationship to an individual. So there's major efforts in terms of this political promotion to build some form of grassroots, that there is some attachment of the populace, of the people, of the citizens to the ideas or the candidates. And in that way, it resembles a lot of other popular cultural activities. It is very much attached to growing the size of an audience to produce its own success. It can't, politics in a democratic sense can't be successful unless it has incredibly large numbers. And if you were thinking of the television rating or something showing on YouTube, you'd be talking about, even in the Australian context, millions and millions of people being connected to this in some way. So the extension of political promotion is through advertising, the paid-for relationship of producing content that gets into the media that is political, yes, but beyond the other forms of rhetoric that are part of politics, it is trying to express something that they can control the message completely, that institution, that party, that individual. And so these spots, paid-for ads and spots in newspapers, radio, and television have occurred for most of the last century in some way. However, it's very important to think that what's going on are techniques of endorsement. In other words, one individual basically announcing their connection to something political, to some political entity, some political party. What's interesting, I think, from the past is that the endorsements were ways in which you literally put something on your body to express your connection to that political movement. So you can see from way back, here's a J.C. Fremont who was going for president but obviously didn't win. We see the Lincoln one. So we're seeing early 19th, mid-19th century. We see Kennedy, but you can pick up these buttons almost anywhere, and I provided a collection of them over here. That is one of the ways that endorsement kind of works within it. The idea that one person is somehow attached to a very large political candidate in some way. The other one that we see right throughout Western democracies, but also elsewhere, is the idea of the poster or the sign or the lawn sign, where people actually put it up to express their connection to the candidate as well. So, and literally it is, again, staking one's relationship to it with a stake. And the third one is probably the one that we're most used to, because it's the one that's connected to other forms of popular culture, the idea of high-profile individuals, celebrity kind of endorsements. And I've tried to give a couple of examples here. John Kerry, a Democratic candidate in the United States, has Bruce Springsteen wrapped around his arm, and as you can see, George Clooney hanging out with Barack Obama. We'd have to assume that some connection is happening between these people. Okay. Television political advertising is often seen as the core or the center of political advertising itself. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. It's very visible, it's very powerful, but it is also probably the most highly regulated type of political advertising that you'll see around the world. This may change. Certainly, we're going to have to work out some other techniques around it. But in some places, there are no television advertisements. There are campaign films or ads that are explicitly constructed, but the idea of paying for it is different than in countries like the United States and, to a degree, Australia. Highly regulated, though. There are even periods of total calm, 24, 48 hours before elections in different countries, where no advertising can be done at all. So there's something about that political advertising is seen as powerful and influential. Now, one of the first TV spots is by Eisenhower, and I want you to look at that. I put it on in a PDF so you can click on it and get on it from the resources for the discussion board this week. And you'll see also the way in which political campaigns have used jingles and slogans to pull people in. So as you can see here, one of the ones listed is Gough Whitlam and Labor's It's Time. You'll see that in Eisenhower's moment it was I Like Ike, which sounds ridiculous now, with lots of cartoon characters attached to it. These are common techniques that it's trying to get your mind basically in a meme viral way attached to this political campaign. I can still remember campaigns from my childhood. So there was one called Davis Can Do It. It's so exciting, Davis can do it. And it doesn't really matter who Davis is, but it's still in my head in the same way as tons of advertisements, commercials over a lifetime are in my head as well. The most common and powerful technique was the advertorial film, I guess we could call it that, the campaign film. Usually a couple of days before the election in the United States, the presidential candidates would put on, buy out 30, maybe an hour of time on all of the networks and just show an incredibly manipulative, lots of violins, lots of efforts to make excitement kind of film, where you get attached to the issues, but you very much get attached to the actual person. Another feature of these that has developed over time is the attack ad or the negative ad. Now, these ads are driven by the idea of taking apart the other candidate, and they roughly constitute about 30% of the type of advertising, at least in the United States. And it's harder to read here because we have different levels of how politics operates at the local level, even though that they're representing sometimes the prime ministerial level. There's also issue ads, which are also worth talking about because this is usually the critique of opposition parties to governments. Governments often do issue-related ads that are kind of backing their own programs prior to elections, and this is often seen as a form of political advertising. It's advertising because they're paying for it, and it's probably political advertising in a very big way. Now, one of the big changes, the contemporary reconstruction of political advertising, this online difference, has occurred more or less in the 21st century. There are examples of websites with politicians much earlier than that, but you'd have to say that roughly from about 2004, the idea of using the internet to generate massive amounts of support for candidates began. In the Howard Dean campaign, it was actually that. It was trying to work out techniques of donations that were done sort of in an online way. But the bigger effect from 2004 to 2008 in the US presidential sort of scene was the way in which Obama used that beginning social networking of what happens on the internet as a replication of a very grassroots volunteer sort of structure that would have existed in all sorts of environments all over the place, all over the world, but was now remade in an online way. Now, one of the things Obama did is he set up My Obama, kind of because if you think of 2008, a bit like MySpace. You know, Facebook was there, but it definitely wasn't big at that time. So My Obama was the term that was sort of used. And it was a social network where people could contribute, connect to others, provide all sorts of content as well. They employed Chris Hughes, who was one of the founders of Facebook, kind of idea of how to construct a campaign that was using the affective or emotional and parasocial relationships that Facebook more or less put in place, and did it in an election campaign. So one of the things that happened is that they worked out ways of using information to target other forms of advertising and also to develop teams of volunteers. So the last thing that was done in those campaigns in 08 and 12 as well is massive user-generated content, and hopefully from that viral sort of productions that emerged from it. Okay, so I've listed some of the ads for this week that I want you to take a look at. We Like Ike, It's Time, which is interesting because it is a kind of endorsement extravaganza of all sorts of famous Australians endorsing Labor and Gough Whitlam. Kennedy ad, very brief, but just realizing how, in a way, almost simplistic the kinds of advertising that was done up to 1960 on television, to the Daisy ad, incredibly sophisticated ad put out by Johnson in 1964 to counter a very right-wing, hawkish, thinking we should press the button for a nuclear bomb sort of thing, Goldwater in 1964. It is probably made by Tony Schwartz, one of the great advertising geniuses. It's called the Daisy ad, so take a look at that. A similar one was done in 1984, 20 years later, called A Bear in the Woods, which was saying that basically Reagan was the only one who could handle the Soviet Union and the danger of socialism and communism, but done in a very metaphorical way. And then play that out, look at Will.i.am for Obama in 2008 called Yes We Can. Again, an endorsement sort of structure video with all sorts of famous people saying lines from Obama's speech in musical rhythm. But more than that was how viral it went so quickly. Millions and millions of hits. Brilliant sort of campaign that developed the emotional tenor. And that was the big difference with what Obama was able to do in 2008, and probably a little less in 2012, although he had the techniques of aggregating data and constructing different directions for a campaign to go. Take a look at all those things. I hope you enjoy it this week. Keep working on your second assignment as well, and realize that some of this material, even though it doesn't look like it was related, is massively related to branding and the campaign sort of briefs that are going on. All right, thank you, and good luck, and enjoy.